Gabriel to come and speak. All the sisters that we lost, and the girls that we lost because of this racism that continues. Canada, like all states that have been colonized in the Americas, has been built on racism and misogyny. They knew that the best way to dismantle or to attack successfully our nations was to attack the family and to take away and undermine the roles and authority of the women. And so today we are here to see how many of you will pass on this message that Indigenous women's rights are human rights, that Indigenous women deserve safety. We've known that the Indian Act targeted Indigenous women, and today it still does in many shapes and forms within our communities. We say that violence has been normalized, genocide has been normalized. And Canada fails to educate their young and their population. I want to say not just Canada, because we both blame the federal government, but provincial governments as well. They are not interested in addressing the systemic causes of the racism and discrimination that Indigenous people feel. The coroner who investigated Joseph Eshekwan's death talked about the systemic racism that was to blame. And when Quebec says there is no systemic racism, there is nothing. They would rather us melt into the melting pot and erase our existence and erase our history upon our homelands rather than deal with the issues. And while it is good to fund organizations, Indigenous organizations, who actually do the services and know the realities of Indigenous people, government is shirking their accountability and responsibility by saying to organizations responsibility to fight the racism and the systemic discrimination that caused the death of Joseph Eshekwan. And then we have to remember some of the earlier cases, the earlier cases that we know, which is having been Glasgow, for which the Manitoba Inquiry, Justice Inquiry was based upon, along with the shooting of William Harper. And both the coroner and Joseph Eshekwan's inquest and Amnesty International have stated that they would both be alive if they were white, if they were not Indigenous. So it's really sad and disgusting that in 2026 we are still talking about the same issue. The same issue because government refuses to move the needle. They refuse to implement any of the commissions, all these commissions that have talked about the reality that Indigenous people have faced with discrimination, surviving genocide, surviving in the residential school. They refuse to take accountability for the genocide that they inflict and continue to inflict. We can talk about statistics, which is 1 in 5 cases of homicide are Indigenous women and girls. And we are considered minorities on our homeland. But we are not minorities. We are nations whose homelands are being occupied, whose homelands are being stolen to create resource development and to create the mine camps that are endangering the women, the Indigenous women, whose communities live near these mine camps. And Bill C5, the Building Canada Act, will increase the threats to their security, threats to Indigenous women's security and Indigenous people. We cannot tolerate anymore governments dragging their feet and saying, here, it's up to you, Indigenous people, for reconciliation. It's up to you to address murdered and missing Indigenous women. And it's good to have these programs in the community. But the problem is Canadian and Quebec society. Fix your society first. You're still living in that patriarchal culture that came over 500 years ago. And that saw women as chattel, that saw women as being disposable. And right now, Indigenous women are treated as disposable. And it doesn't matter what the government does, the performance to placate their constituents. We know that they're not doing enough. And Indigenous women and their families deserve better. We deserve access to justice. It's not enough to say we are supporting Indigenous languages that they threaten continually. It protects bill that promotes public hours. Indigenous languages should be taught education in our communities because that's where they are spoken. And Indigenous languages connect us to the land and help us appreciate the God that is living. And it is this very philosophy that the colonizer has wanted to destroy. So we've become disconnected from our lands, become disconnected from our first mother, our Mother Earth. We have had and given many chances to government to do the right thing. But it always comes down to the bottom line. It always comes down to how much does it cost. Well, here we are, gathering again to remember those women who have been murdered or missing because government had vanished during its fields. We can throw money, yes, we can throw money at people who need to have the resources to help people. But what about the attitudes? Even from Supreme Court decisions that talk about Aboriginal title. Settlers do not want to see any of that. They don't want us to be like that. And they don't want us to feel safe and secure on our own homelands. They would rather the status quo continue of committing violence against Indigenous people and not doing anything about it. And throwing money at the police. And they are the problems, as Human Rights Watch has said. As the young lady has said. All those women that were abused in Indigenous women in Valentine, they did not get justice. They promised. There is no justice. The justice system has failed Indigenous women, and it has failed Indigenous people, and it is failing you. The system is broken. If we look at the global society, we see that women in general are treated as chattel. And that the perpetrators will always be protected. But there needs to be sustainable solutions in education, in the law, in the outlying field of social services and healthcare. It cannot be just services. It has to be a mind change to bring about the change that we want to see, which is safe for Indigenous women and girls. We want to be self-determined. I have not seen how Canada has fostered and nurtured Indigenous people's rights to self-determination. It is quite the opposite. The status quo is changing its face. So today, as we march and we remember all those Indigenous women and girls that have gone missing because of the colonization and the genocide that continues, we must go home and do something and call their MPs, call the members of their National Assembly and say you want structural changes, you want education changes, justice. Because we cannot wait anymore. We've been waiting a long time for justice, and if we had our way, we would be the ones creating the solutions and the changes, not the government. So I guess I will end there. Thank you all for coming, and I'll pass it back to the organizer. And it's not.
My name is Valentine. I have first family friend. She was not 800 years old. She was given alcohol at 800 years old. When she got raped, she was late. That was my way to the town, and she was
Would Kutalik or Desiree Rich like to come to the stage, or either of them available to speak? Desiree?